Welcome back to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating, highly specific spiritual roadmap for humanity. We're going to unpack the philosophical forecast for Earth's future, exactly as it's laid out in the book, The Laws of Salvation. Our goal today is to impartially break down the core concepts of this text, taking its complex spiritual frameworks and turning them into clear, structured takeaways. So if you've ever been curious about how spiritual movements envision global transformation, you are absolutely in the right place. For this explainer, we're zooming straight into a very striking section of the book, Chapter 6. The original Japanese title of this chapter translates to Forecast, and it carries this pretty weighty subtitle, What is the Power to Create the Earth's Future? You see, this chapter doesn't just toss out vague predictions. It actually proposes a highly structured, unique spiritual method for averting global crisis. It's basically asking us to completely rethink where the power to shape tomorrow actually comes from. So here's our roadmap for today. We're looking at the blueprint of tomorrow, ruling your own life, mercy as the key word, battling dark predictions, and finally, building the future society. Okay, let's jump right into part 1, the blueprint of tomorrow, building on the word. Before we get into what individuals are supposed to actually do, we need to understand the ground they're supposedly building upon. The text establishes right away that the upcoming future society will be constructed directly upon the words and teachings provided by the author. It states explicitly that these teachings aren't just, helpful advice for a good life. They are positioned as the literal architectural framework for a new era. And this is a crucial starting point because it frames every single subsequent instruction in the book not as a mere suggestion, but as a mandatory building block for a functional future. Moving right along to part 2, ruling your own life and the power of the mind. So now we're zooming inward. Once that foundation of teachings is set, the primary instruction is about taking uncompromising control over your own life. Drawing directly from the text, this quote really brilliantly illustrates the core mechanic at play here. Everything is up to your mind. Your mind is what will develop the future you and your country. Think about how often we look to external leaders or institutions to shape our society, right? Well, this text flips that entirely. It argues that the trajectory of a nation is simply the sum total of its citizens' internal mental states. You can actually see the imperative language used in the original Japanese text here. The author poses a very direct challenge to the reader, asking you to examine your own mind, because it's seen as the ultimate tool for personal creation. You aren't just passively experiencing your life, you are explicitly instructed to rule and create it. The idea is that the future isn't something that just happens to you, it's something you generate from within. Which brings us to part 3, mercy as the keyword, focusing on outward action. Okay, so you've theoretically mastered your own mind. How does that actually translate to how you interact with people? The crucial point here is how the text defines mercy, or jihi in Japanese. In everyday conversation, mercy usually means showing forgiveness or maybe having pity, but the text defines it a bit differently. It describes mercy as the nature of actively desiring to give good things to others. So it's not passive at all. It's this proactive, outward-facing drive to impart good, to actually elevate the people around you based on that internal mental control you've established. And according to the author, embodying this specific, active definition of mercy is the single most essential element needed to shape a positive future society. The text actually designates mercy as the literal keyword for the future. The argument here is that if a society is composed of individuals who have ruled their own minds and are actively driven to give good things to one another, well, the foundation for a utopian future is practically set. Next up is part 4, battling dark predictions and the spiritual weapon. Now, you might be thinking this all sounds like a peaceful stroll into a golden age, right? Well, not exactly. Building this future requires fighting against the pessimistic trajectories currently facing our world. The text sets up a really stark contrast. On one side, we have the evil future predictions dominating the world. Think apocalyptic anxieties, societal collapse, general global pessimism. On the other side is the author's proposed solution, utilizing spiritual enlightenment as a weapon. This is a fascinating use of terminology, honestly. Enlightenment here isn't just a state of Zen-like peace, it's militarized. It is a tool for ideological combat against a doomed forecast. The text demands an active battle. Individuals are expected to use their attained enlightenment to push back hard against these dark prophecies. You reject negative forecasts. You wield your spiritual understanding as a literal tool to change reality, and you purposefully combat pessimistic societal trends. It's essentially asking you to consider how your own philosophical outlook can act as a shield against the daily barrage of doom scrolling and global anxiety, completely overriding the world's default trajectory with this new blueprint. And that leads us to our final section, Part 5, Building the Future Society, the Ultimate Goal. Now we're pulling all the way back to the macro level. The culmination of this entire forecast requires faith in El Cantare. Within the framework of the text, El Cantare is the supreme spiritual figure that the author points to as the guiding force for this whole new era. The ultimate instruction for building the future society is inextricably linked to this belief. All that mental control and spiritual combat we just talked about, it's ultimately directed toward realizing the specific vision associated with this figure. And this really highlights the sheer scale of the book's ambition. As you can see on the book's English cover, this faith is positioned as the definitive key to rescuing the Earth. But it doesn't just stop at saving the planet. It explicitly states this will open a new way for the upcoming space age. So the text bridges this wild gap between ancient spiritual concepts like enlightenment and mercy and science fiction-esque futures of cosmic expansion. To summarize this whole conceptual journey, the text lays out a very clear, 4-step escalation. Step 1, control the mind, rule your internal state. Step 2, cultivate mercy, actively desire to give good to others. Step 3, weaponize enlightenment, use your spiritual growth to fight dark global predictions. And Step 4, believe in El Cantare, align with the supreme spiritual force to usher in a new space age. It's a highly structured, logical flow that takes you right from the individual mind all the way to the cosmic scale. Ultimately, regardless of your personal beliefs, the laws of salvation forces us to pause and ask a pretty provocative question. How much control does human willpower and spiritual belief truly have over the trajectory of Earth's future? Can structured mindsets and collective faith actually rewrite our collective destiny? It's a heavy question, for sure, and one that clearly drives the entire philosophy outlined in this text. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep questioning the blueprints of tomorrow.